This is WAAT 750 AM on your radio dial. This is Dr. Daria Brezinski with Children Come First, with children of all ages. Today we're broadcasting from the Dallas Correctional Institute, and we will be interviewing several inmates to talk about their experiences and how we can better effectively change the educational system in the state of Pennsylvania. We'd like to thank our sponsor, CK Auto, with stores in Kingston and Music and Scranton. We have inmate Charles Hawes with us today, and Charles has been at the Dallas Correctional Institute for the last 20 years. He is what is known as a lifer. He has been at the Dallas Correctional Institute for the last 20 years. He is, we're not going to talk about what he's done today, but once you come into the Dallas Correctional Institute, you're here for life, and you do not come out. Is that correct?
Life is life in the state of Pennsylvania.
So, one of the questions we'd like to ask you is, when we know that we're not going to try and focus on crimes here or what anybody's done, or that's not what we're here about. This program is about creating solutions for kids all over the state of Pennsylvania and all over the world if we possibly can. And what we'd like to get some information from you is, how can we prevent the kinds of things that happen to the people who are in this institution from happening to kids? What kinds of things can we do to prevent it, especially in the educational system? I found it interesting that Mr. Hawes wrote an article, which I'm told was not printed yet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's called State Funding Hate Factories. If the Department of Corrections were a business, the Consumer Product Safety Commission would shut them down immediately. What did you mean by that?
Well, basically, when you see the recidivism rate within our state correctional institutions, it's obvious that there's a failure here. I mean, what we're doing is we're sending basically a defective product out these main gates, and these guys are continually coming back again and again. So when I wrote that article, if you've read it, you'll notice that I was trying to address some of the issues and directed at change within the prison institutions.
For example, what?
Well, for example, programming. Right now they have, they're doing a lot of, they're directed towards punitive more than trying to correct the problems. They've taken away a lot of the educational programs that were needed. There was a time in this area here in these classrooms, they were filled to capacity. That's when they had college courses and so forth. Well, they did away with the grants, the Pell Grants in 1995. And once they did that, there was very few avenues for individuals to continue their education except for possibly their GEDs.
Well, how do you answer a parent who says, here's a person who's in prison for life or, for a long period of time, who has access to getting a Pell Grant, and here I am working 2 jobs, a single mother with 2 kids, and I can't get my child an education?
Well, see, that's one of the fallacies that's been perpetrated to the public. They believe that when an individual goes to apply for a Pell Grant, they have to meet certain financial situations. Now, they hear a lot of rhetoric that not realizing that even though they've taken these Pell Grants away from us, which was, I think, was a real small percentage of the money that was coming out of the Pell Grants that were allowed prisoners to begin with. It was somewhere around 1%. So for an individual on the outside who applies for a Pell Grant and they tell them, well, look, your financial situation doesn't meet the criteria, so your Pell Grant will be denied. Now, even so, now that they've taken the Pell Grants away from prisoners, now if this individual goes back and applies for this Pell Grant again, if their financial situation hasn't changed, it's simply because they've taken the Pell Grants away from prisoners, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be accepted for a grant themselves. It's just, it's not going to have any effect on them whether we have the Pell Grants or not.
Okay. I'd just like to ask from a personal point of view. I think I have two gentlemen here with life sentences. Is that correct? No? Okay, you're just the only one with a life sentence here. How do you sustain yourself knowing that you're in here and there's no way of getting out? I mean, you obviously sound like you're an articulate, intelligent human being. How do you sustain yourself and have hope and go on every day?
Well, my key has been to participate and stay active in programs that maybe, you always have that faith that one day you're going to get out of it. You're not going to, I'm not going to lose faith in that. I want to keep, whether it's through the court system or whatever, through commutation down the road, hopefully someday. You just can't lose faith and one day you're going to be out of here. So you still apply yourself in that direction. But on the other hand, as long as you're in here, I mean, there's other people that are going to be going out into society. And I think, part of my responsibility within this community is to work, towards helping others. I mean, it's obvious that there's a lot of guys in here that sort of look up to the individuals that have been around for a while. And if you can mentor them in any way, to give them certain guidance or help them focus their time and place themselves in a better situation to better prepare them for when they leave here, so that they don't come back. I mean, that's my aim. That's probably what motivates me and keeps me going pretty much.
We have Terrence Anderson.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know, I'm not sure about your educational background or whatever. Do you have your GED? Did you graduate from high school?
No, I do not. But I'm taking my GED now. I finished my courses, so I'm waiting for the results.
What do you think we can do as far as did our educational system help you when you were in high school? Or how far did you get in high school?
11th grade.
Did our educational system give you assistance and be supportive of you? Do you feel that, we let you down in that way, or was your situation more within your community and your neighborhood?
More than in my neighborhood. The system didn't let me down. I let myself down. Okay. The education was there. I just didn't apply myself to go get it. I was more into running around on the streets, being I say, as you can say, a bad boy. But mostly it really starts at the family. I didn't have that good background. I grew up in a poor society. But I chose to leave that road. No one chose it for me. The education was there. I just didn't go to succeed.
Tell me what your family was like.
Well, it was hard. Growing up with 6 kids and a mother. There was no father figure there. I looked at my big brothers. That's my father. Yeah, it was hard. Very hard.
Were any of your other brothers or sisters in trouble?
Not really. They all graduated. I'm the only one that didn't.
If you could give any guidance to young people, I assume are you from the city?
Yes, I am.
Which city?
No, Philadelphia.
If you could give any advice to youths or to parents who are listening in today, what kind of advice would you give them?
Help the young kids. It's a bigger world, and they have better quality things out there than what we had when we was young. All right, it starts at home. You can educate your kid at home. Help them, because a lot of people, us older people, we didn't have it when we was growing up. We didn't have it. We was learning the streets of survival. That was our education, the streets. Our education wasn't the books. We was learning how to survive. All right, a lot of people didn't have it. But what we have today, you got a whole lot of choices, a whole lot of education. It's only what you do with it. It's up to you.
So you think then that the poverty issue was critical for you in terms of the direction you went, and yet I know quite a few people who have come out of poverty situations and applied themselves in school. Would you consider that the only factor, or perhaps the fact that you only had a mother in your home with a lot of children?
The poverty, it's like a 50-50. It's what you do with it. If you come up in a bad background, a poor surroundings, it's only what certain people can do with it. All right, I'm still here and I'm still going. So evidently, poverty wasn't just all of it. I'm still learning. After 15, 17 years, I'm 32, and I'm still going. So God is still giving me a chance.
How many are you available for parole and when?
4th of July, 2000.
And what kinds of skills will you be leaving here with in terms of the work world?
Oh, the work world, the skills that I have, I'm a forklift driver, also a mover, also a meat cutter. But see, I bettered myself. I didn't go through training. I learned hand-on-hand basis.
Now, are those the things that you learned here in the prison?
No, what I learned here was to better my education, to survive, to keep my head up. You still got hope. Life ain't over with. It's what you do with it. If you want to sit back and relax and mope around and be a problem, you'll be a problem. But if you determined to get up off your feet and do what you got to do, you can survive. The education is there. It's only up to you if you want to come and get it.
Okay. We also have Randall Hunter here.
Rodell Hunter.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Rodell, how old are you?
19.
And how long have you been here?
Maybe a year and a half, about a good year.
Do you have your high school education?
No, I got my GED.
And what year did you, when you were in high school, how far did you get?
I'd say to about the 10th grade.
And what happened to you?
Well, basically me, my whole thing was I got caught up in, the crowd, the certain people I was around, I lived with, I hung with a crowd that wasn't really based around education. It was based on other things in life as survival. And that's why I set away from my education to survive out there. I grew up with my grandmother, so I never really had a role model, a father figure, however you want to say it. My role models was on the street. I looked up to drug dealers. I looked up to TV stars, not even basketball players like Michael Jordan. I didn't look up to them type people because that was all a dream to me, a dream I would never succeed in. So I looked up to more of my life, more things that was based around my life, surrounded around me.
Was it only you and your grandmother in the house?
Yes.
And was there anything in the community? Was there any kind of support system in the community for you?
There is support. There is some community programs and things you are able to attend, but I didn't really have nobody to show me that way. There was nobody there to show me this program that can help me or this can help me. There was nobody there to really show me that path. You've been here now a year and you're getting your GED. What does it feel like, the difference between being in prison and being out in the community? Well, it has its advantages and its disadvantages, Being away from your family is not good in no way. That's a painful feeling all by itself. But, I was able to come get my GED, whereas if I was on the street, I know I would have never did it. If I would have never got this experience, I would have probably been doing the same thing. I wouldn't have been chained. I'd have still been on the street, going to selling drugs, doing what I usually do.
Is that what brought you in here, selling drugs?
No, I was here on a robbery.
Okay. What I'm finding really interesting is the fact that I'm talking to three very articulate people here, and it just totally amazes me the intelligence level of the group that we have here today. And I'm wondering, listening out there, our listeners, if we can't look at, there are many things I see here, and one of them is reflecting on the article that Charles Haas has written down here. Consumers beware, is our prison system producing and releasing a dangerous and defective product? And I'm wondering if, in fact, the product that comes in here that we as society and through our educational system does not create something that is happening here within the system itself. And we call it a correctional institute. Can you tell us, I look at our educational system and it looks like a control model to me. We have a teacher who stands up in front of the classroom and basically controls the classroom. Now, this is called a correctional institute. Do you see this as correctional, or am I missing something here? I mean, would you say that was what the environment is here?
I think the correctional reflects more towards rehabilitation. I think that's what most people sort of understand that to be. On the other hand, that's run its course. Rehabilitation has run its course, especially in this particular state here. They lean towards punitive now. They want to build more prisons versus we've known that they're building more prisons now than they're building schools. There's a focus, out into society. Society has they have a responsibility too, as a community, to build more programs out there, after-school programs for, teenagers, young kids to participate in, to give them a different direction, to get their focused. There's educational, vocational, spiritual, recreational. All these types of programs is what's needed out there to keep these kids, off the streets, away from gangs, away from drugs, and get them involved in these types of things. It's parents, it's community as a whole. This is what's needed. This is what needs to be built, not more prisons. Right now, I was reading an article in the paper the other day. I think they said there was 1 out of every 150 Americans in prisons. This is ridiculous in this society. It's not supposed to be. And yet, they're building more prisons as we speak right now. And this hasn't been the answer for 200 years, and it's not the answer now. Community has to be involved, along with the families. Families like each one of these guys here may have had problems, within their families and so forth, but, still society has a responsibility, to give these individuals another place to go other than the streets and more. The whole thing of it is if you want to teach somebody to do something and do it well, it requires, relentless repetition, practice, and that's what has to be done with these guys. The younger generation now, the kids, the teenagers, get them involved in these programs and be relentless with them. Have them involved in them over and over again. Change their direction. If you have an individual that thinks in one direction, that's the direction he's going to lean towards. If they're leaning towards drugs and alcohol and crime and so forth, that's the direction they're going to go in. If they have opportunities to participate in these other programs, like I said, educational, vocational, spiritual, and so forth, if they have the opportunities to participate in these types of programs and you get them involved over and over again, I think you can change their directions and their focus. That's my belief.
Did you have something else?
Oh, no.
We haven't established where you felt you went wrong here in getting in here.
Well, as I said just a moment ago, I've had my problems, as a teenager. And looking back on it now, some of the things that I got involved in was alcohol, drugs to an extent, and that type of avenue. That's the avenue I chose to take. Now, as I said before, in the community I was in, unless you was involved in high school and so forth, a lot of these programs weren't available. After school, programs mainly, where you could focus your time in a more constructive manner. Mine was basically on the streets, and that's pretty much where I went wrong.
So you didn't have parental discipline in your house?
Not the way I should have, no.
Did you have a mother and father?
Yes, I was in a single-parent family.
And how many, do you have brothers and sisters?
I've had 6 sisters and 5 brothers. There was 12 of us total.
In a house, in a single-parent house?
Well, several were grown up by the time that my parents had divorced. So several of them were out on their own by their marriages.
Did your mother work?
Yeah, she worked all of her life.
And then you children had to fend for yourself, is that it?
Pretty much so. very much so.
It seems to me that I'm getting a profile here of single-parent homes, and judging from the fact that our divorce rate is 50% at the moment, and probably higher in major cities, it seems to me that we need to look at the structure of our. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that there, and I kind of felt that subject was going to come up, with single-parent homes. And what strikes me funny is I have a niece, a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she has 4 boys. Okay, she's a single parent raising 4 boys. Now, they age from 16, I think 16, 14, and 9, I think there's one younger. Now, these individuals, I mean, they're wonderful boys. They're doing wonderful out there. And the key is that she's raised them, by herself. And the one thing that I've noticed that she's involved in the community also, is mainly after-school programs. That, not only that, but as a single parent, I mean, she camps with them, and she participates, in the ball games practice, basketball, softball, soccer. I mean, they're involved in spiritual churches, and she's steady involved in there with these boys. I'm telling you, they're great kids. I hear from them in communication with them, constantly, and it's just, it's wonderful to see her, raise these 4 boys the way she's doing. So, like I say, the biggest part is the community that she lives in is also supplied avenues for these kids to take, other than the streets. And because she's, been with them and participates with them, this is the direction they're going in. And I think it's great.
I was talking to a few people here, and it seems to me that I'm listening to the fact that failure isn't an option in prison. Do I have that correctly?
Yes, you do. I mean, it's good that you can come here and without having to pay, get the proper education you need, or take the trades you may need, or you can use for when you go out there in the world, where as if you do live out in the world, you have to pay for these type of programs, these type of trades and whatnot, where most people don't have that type of money to pay. So, the options is very, minimal.
Okay. Would you say the same thing, Terrence?
Yes. Well, you have your programs there. I can say one thing. Out there in the world, there's a lot of programs. There's programs there. I am affiliated with a program. It's called ODAD. It's a recovery program that gives back to the people, that takes poor people off the street, drug addicts.
Are you involved in that here in the prison?
No, I am not.
Oh.
No, I am not. I haven't been involved with it in 2 years. And there's a lot of programs out there, but getting back to what I said, that stability, it starts at home. As you can see, a lot of us, the father figures weren't there. Mostly all of them is locked up. 75% of us is gone. We're all in jail, either on drugs, either dead, or even turned homosexual. All right, there is no father figures there. Mothers got to raise these kids, us, mostly, raise all of us, and it's hard. It's hard.
This is Dr. Daria Brezinski. This program is called Children Come First. Our program airs every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. You are listening to WAAT 750 a.m. We are here at the Dallas Correctional Institute, and we are interviewing 3 prisoners, Terrence Anderson, Charles Haas, and Rodale Hunter. We are talking to them about how they were raised, what backgrounds they came from, and how it imparted and impacted their lives, and perhaps led them on the road here into the prison at the Dallas Correctional Institute. We have, what we are doing is reflecting on the prison system itself. We were just talking about that failure was not an option in the prison here. What kinds of I get the feeling, and there's a lot of sensationalism on television with regards to prison. You never really know what you can believe and what you can't believe. I'm not going to ask you, personal kinds of things, but I got the sense from television that you have to. My question before was, failure is not an option because it seems that the weak don't survive here. Does that? Do I have a generally good idea? I mean, is that the case here?
The weak don't survive.
Mm-hmm.
You're only weak if you don't want to survive. You can survive. Like I said, it's up to you. The things are here for you to do what you want to do, especially education. It's here. It's not too much, but it's here. You just have to go in.
Well, tell me, one of the teachers were telling me this morning that I was speaking to here that the basic number one problem they have here is motivating people. Obviously, I've got the wrong three people here in here talking to me because it seems that every single one of the teachers this morning said that they find it extraordinarily difficult to motivate the prisoners to excel and to get better grades. And they gave me an example, which was that they, I guess, got the impression from the parole board that, if they got their GED or did well in school or whatever, that somehow they, be able to get out of here early or whatever. They go back to the parole board and they find out they can't get out, and the first thing they do is drop their courses. Do I have that accurately depicted?
You talk about the motivating factor in here and the lack of. Now, there's rumor have it. I want to give you for instance here. There's rumor has it that to encourage class participation, once an individual signs up to participate in an educational class over here, whatever it may be, that if they fail to make a class, that there are going to be misconducts written. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is a policy that's being written up right now. Now, to me, this is almost like a reverse motivating factor. An idea, even though the idea is good to get individuals to participate. Well, if I'm that individual, what it's telling me is to not to sign up for the class to begin with, and to avoid the misconduct altogether. And where does that lead? What message does that send?
Well, it sounds exactly like the laws and issues that are dealt with in our educational system itself. They try to make external rules and regulations and policies for people. And I must say, most people do it with good intention.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, it tends to do just the opposite of what we think it's going to do. We have a minute here, and we're going to be taking a short break to acknowledge our sponsors here. You are listening to Children Come First. This is Dr. Daria Brezinski, and we are here at the Dallas Correctional Institute interviewing the inmates and talking to them about how we can better effectively help our children. This is Dr. Daria Brezinski. You are listening to Children Come First, WAAT 750 on your radio dial. And we are here interviewing several prisoners from the Dallas Correctional Institute and finding out how we can better change our culture, our society, our families, and our education through their eyes. Jim, you had a question?
Yes, the question I had was, I was curious to know if Terrence, Charles, or Rodale would like to answer this question about the news media and media's depiction of prisoners and prison life, and whether or not you think it's an accurate portrayal. And also, I'm curious about politicians running for office and how they're always bragging about things like 100% conviction rates and that sort of thing. And I think people who are serving the public, especially, like if it's a district attorney or a judge, they should not be concerned with 100% conviction rate. They should be concerned with 100% getting at the truth. And I think there's a bit of a disparity there.
I think you pretty much answered your own question. Right now, and anytime you open up the papers right now, in particular, you see these prosecuting attorneys that are vying for judgeships. And one of their issues that they're campaigning on is their conviction rate. I mean, they're always talking about how many convictions they have, how they're going to be stronger on crime, how they're going to, encourage more punishment, more punitive than anything else. But it's, when you have a district attorney that is running for a judgeship, what type of sense does this make? I thought a judge is supposed to be, unbiased and sit there and give it an equal opportunity to both defendant and the prosecutor on both sides. Here you have district attorneys saying, they want to become elected as judge so they can prosecute and put people away more. Well, the whole thing is being a judge is being fairness. It's on both sides. It's listening to the issues and making an honest judgment on the outcome. Now, these district attorneys, for the most part, are saying, elect me. I'll put them away. I'll lock them up. And they've already got, they're already having more convictions sitting on the bench as a judge than they were as a prosecutor. And it's getting to the point now to where they're just campaigning on that one issue, crime.
Well, if you look at the way that the media covers this issue and the way the success rate of politicians who run on a hard-on crime stance and the fear of politicians with being painted soft on crime, it seems like an effective political strategy. Whether it's good for society in the long run, I think, is another story.
Well, that's true. You're not going to have very many politicians that are going to be standing up for the rehabilitation program of anyone. They're not going to campaign on prison reform. That's not, to them, that's a non-issue. Their whole issue is, as I said, is more leaning towards punitive. That's what society, they convince society into believing that that's what's needed. That, over and over again, it's proven that, this isn't the solution. The solution is not controlling the problem, but correcting the problem. And I think their focus is entirely in the wrong direction.
In that vein, I noticed in your article, Charles, that you talk about the people who get sentenced eventually get released back into society. And are there any attempts here to rehabilitate people's behavior? And if so, oftentimes in institution there's a disparaging difference between people who try to rehabilitate you and then you go back into the system and it's basically the same thing. And so is there a disparaging difference between those who are trying to help you, for example, the education and the counselors here, and then you go back into the prison and maybe whatever is happening in the prison contradicts with what you've just learned in the classroom or with the counselor?
Well, that's it. You have many programs in here. Not I wouldn't say many, but you have several programs in here that are aimed towards rehabilitation. The drug and alcohol in particular, where individuals, they leave their blocks and go to the clinic, to participate in these groups. And I've witnessed it where individuals will sit down into a drug and alcohol group. And the counselor, now he can only give these inmates the tools, supply them with the tools, the necessary tools that they need to change their lives around. And they'll sit there and they'll listen to the staff member go through their lessons and so forth. And it might be an hour or 2-hour group meeting. They'll leave the meeting. They'll head back to their blocks. On the way back to their blocks, they run a gauntlet of certain correctional officers that are, they don't really seem to support the rehabilitation process in here. It sort of ran its course to them. So, after you run a gauntlet, facing them on the way back to the blocks, by the time you get there, basically, you need some more counseling. You want to get back over there and talk to these counselors, or, whether it's drug and alcohol or spiritual or whatever, to get uplifted again, after dealing with certain issues. I think it's almost like a yo-yo effect. You have people involved in the treatment area that want to, to build your self-esteem, like I said, to give you the tools to make the necessary changes in your life. And then you leave there and you run into an entirely different atmosphere on the way back to the blocks.
So it seems that the people who are trained in terms of, you're talking about the officers here who stand in the hallways and regulate people moving from one place to another, obviously have a different teaching experience and preparation experience than the people who are your counselors or who are your teachers here. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I mean, yes. In that point, I mean, they look at us as prisoners. That's just plain prisoners, criminals. They don't see the rehabilitation in us. So that's not helpful at all. It may, as a matter of fact, it makes you more angry to to see that they reflect you as just a criminal and nothing else, like you're not a human being. It's like you don't have feelings, you don't have emotion, and so you have to hide that, to get by in here. Because if you don't, then you're just gonna make things harder on yourself.
During making these comments, one thing should be made clear that all correctional officers, they're not to be spoken of in a negative way, because they're all not negative.
No.
There's a select few that act in this way. And, I think there's another thing I commented in that particular article. It talks about the code of ethics for the correctional officer, which is the 3 C's. It's care, custody, and control. Now, there's no doubt, I'm sure you've seen as you've taken your tour in there today, there's no problem with control or custody. So that doesn't seem to be a problem. But as part of that code of ethics, one of those C's, which being care, I think holds correctional officers responsible in the rehabilitative process. And I think, some direction should be more training possibly in that direction, whether it's conflict resolutions, training in that area for the correctional officer. I think that's part of the solution there.
So what happens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you perhaps go to a counselor who gives you mediation training, and you're also told that you can't be argumentative or combative or aggressive in any way, shape, or form. That's what you're learning in your courses and in your education, and then you come outside and you perhaps meet a correction officer who hasn't had the same kind of training, and all of a sudden treats you in the opposite of what exactly you've just been learning in the classroom. Is that, am I correct in that assessment?
Yes, truly, yes. Drug program is there to help you. As it says, how can I put this? I feel as though like this. They said they program you, but they get to deprogram. And by you coping with yourself on rehabilitating yourself, keeping yourself calm and cool, and then have to deal with the pressure that's outside of that one area that you came from, it's going to be very hard. By you trying to keep yourself above water, and I guess I can say, as a correctional officer, look at you down. There's not a lot of them, but there's some. And look at you down as just a plain inmate and not a man. We know we made our mistakes. we're here to correct our mistakes. Right? Some of us, not all, some of us. Right? We doing the time, yes, we might need help, but also I think the officers need a little help too.
What would you consider we do to get, I mean, what would you consider we as the outsiders do to help that care factor somehow get across to these officers? I mean, what can we do to get that? I mean, I can understand, I heard some stories at lunch regarding, sometimes officers look aside and, an inmate who has raped a 3-year-old or a woman or something might get beaten up or whatever. But how can we, on the outside, help an officer understand the care factor that you were talking about in terms of the 3 C's? What would you suggest we do?
Well, I think it involves, as I said, more types of training in that area. Most of their training is focused in, like I say, in custody and control, and very little in the care end of it. So I think there should be a lot more focus directed in that area. Conflict resolutions or whatever it may be. Human behavior modification, something in that area. More training available to them.
Well, I can understand. I mean, if I was sitting in a classroom and somebody taught me to do mediation training and taught me how to deal with my feelings and, be able to keep calm and cool, and all of a sudden I came outside and somebody kicked me, pushed me, or, treated me inhumanely, it would be pretty difficult to harness my anger at that point.
That type of behavior, as far as physical goes, contact from the correctional officers and staff in general, that doesn't happen too much. It's mostly mental. It's a different type of abuse. It's not so much physical in there.
Well, how does mental abuse get conveyed? You were showing me writing?
Well, what I was trying to, I thought he was going to catch on. Like he said, it's not physical. It's not physical. The mental is that they can hurt you more with the pen than they can hurt you more with their hands.
The pen is mightier than a sword
Pen
here,
is
too.
mighty.
What does that mean? But what does that mean in reality? How is the pen more potent? What do you mean?
Yeah, I'm on it. Parole board for one. That can hurt you.
So you mean they write you up?
Most definitely.
Okay.
And it will stick.
Okay.
It will stick.
And so they write you up for misconducts or what kinds of things?
It can be anything. I'll give you a small example. A very small example. Maybe just a bag of sugar. Coming back from the shower with a bag of sugar. Maybe we get caught. We know it's wrong. All right. We know it's wrong. But hey, a lot of people drink coffee. A lot of people use sugar. That's not like we going out here trying to hurt somebody. We're not, coming up to you saying, give it to you. We know it's wrong, but a write-up can hurt you. It can hurt you bad with your parole board. It can hurt you bad down the line during your time.
But if you're knowing something is wrong, I mean, isn't the whole point of being corrected to learn that stealing aren't a lot of people in here because they've been stealing? Isn't that the same thing? I mean, tell me, I don't get what the line of delineation is. If you're learning to be corrected from your behavior and you're still stealing, I mean, shouldn't an officer do that then? Isn't that part of the correction process? Or have I missed something?
No, it's
I mean, what he's saying, like, it's not necessarily stealing the bag of sugar. It's they rather you go to the store and spend your money and buy it instead of, getting it from them in the kitchen. That's what that's all about. And sometimes, you have officers that'll let you go ahead, let you slide with it. But you had one that just, want to get this certain name about them where don't mess with them. They ain't, they serious business where they will write you up, just to try to hurt you.
What does that write-up do for you?
I mean, it can do anything. Like, it can hurt you for parole as one. Some of you may even be stuck in your cell restriction for it. We getting punished. Things that little kids do, little children get, cell restriction, loss of privileges. These are things that you do to child. You know, that can be very deteriorating to me anyway. You know.
Well, how long do you have before you get out, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I mean, I'm right now waiting on my green sheet, so I could be leaving anywhere from a month to 2 months.
Okay. And how long do you have, Mr. Anderson?
1 year.
Do you feel that when you come out, you'll be able to not be tempted by those groups that you belong? I'm assuming you're going to go back to your old neighborhood. I mean, how are you going to change, or what's going to be different about you going back there, and are you going to be able as one person to herd off all those people in your community?
Why not? It's control. If you control yourself here, you can control yourself out there. My motivation is my children. That's my biggest motivation.
How many children do you have?
I have 5.
Okay.
5 children.
And is your wife home taking care of them
No,
now?
I'm not married, but their mothers live.
Okay. And how about you? You're
Can
19,
yes.
and you're going to be getting out in 2 months or so. How are you going to be able to, you're going to be staying back with your grandmother, I'm assuming. How are you
Yes.
going to be able to deal with the community you're going back into?
Really, I mean, now that I've got this experience, this is one that I wouldn't like to, repeat. And at the same time, I'm going to keep myself occupied out there as I didn't before. Now I'm smarter now, I'm much more mature from when I first came in. So, I'm gonna seek different programs, I'm gonna seek different things to do so I don't get caught up in the same things.
Will you have your high school and you have your GED when you graduate from here?
But yeah, I already got my GED, I just got it last year.
Now, when you get out, will they prepare you with jobs, or do they help you get a job when you get out of here, or do they just, put you outside the door and you're gone and you're back to your community? What happens?
I guess they do have programs to do that, but for the most part, I believe you have to get out and find, how to get a job yourself, help find one. Right here is just the process of teaching you different things so you are able to get that job, or go job hunting and searching for a job.
So they really don't help rehabilitate you when people get out? You've been here for a long time.
Yeah, there's very few individuals that have come back and spoke very positively about safety nets once they're released from here. Sometimes I wonder if that doesn't also contribute to the recidivism rate.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's, as far as some individuals, when they see the parole board, they have stipulations. If they have a drug-related crime, then chances are they're going to a halfway house where they'll be required to participate in drug and alcohol programs. Other individuals, like I say, once they leave here, they may not be required to participate in any programs at all. So if they do mess up, even in the drug and alcohol programs, where's the safety net for them to continue that type of treatment? So many of them are violated and sent back to prisons for victims. They're not even crimes. Some of them are maybe traffic violations, summary offenses, and so forth. There's not even a crime involved, but because they've broken the rule. And granted, they have the rules. They know they should abide by these rules, but in society, we don't live in utopias. There's rules that are going to be broken.
So I'm assuming then that when people leave here, that there's nothing here. Basically they walk out the door and there's nothing here in terms of continued rehabilitation, drug and alcohol, violence, anything. There's no counseling involved whatsoever. Once you're out of here, you're gone.
Well,
in
some cases, like I said, they are required to participate in drug and alcohol programs as a stipulation to the parole. As far as from the feedback that I get, like I said, I've been there 20 years, and all the feedback that I've gotten from individuals that have returned, they're not very quality programs to begin with. It's more or less, it's up to you to stay clean.
When you go back to your family, you said you had 5 children in Philadelphia?
Yes, I do.
What kinds of things are you going to do for your children so that they don't follow the path of their father?
Educate them on the mistakes that I made so they won't follow in my footsteps, follow in their own footsteps. All I can do is just guide them straight. All right, let them learn from what my mistake was and allow me to keep on going with that.
What kinds of things are you going to do for them?
Well, all I can do is just really just guide them, show them there is better ways than following the wrong paths.
When we were talking about, it's really interesting because I've spoken to some people who have been in prison before, and this is my first time inside the prison. Knowing the other prisoners that are here, I think they've given me a cross-section here of probably the brightest people in the prison. You're with me today, I'm not sure.
Not necessarily.
No?
No, there's a whole lot of individuals in here. I can give you a long list of individuals in here that, like you said, you mainly hear about the bad things. That's what people like to publicize. That's what that dramatizes prison life and so forth. You seldom hear about the good things. And there's a whole list of them that go on here. The Deborah Hart Foundation. I mean, there's so many individuals that participate in here for worthy causes in society. I mean, they still contribute.
Wait a minute, whoa. I don't understand that. How can you be in here and contribute to society? Explain that.
Well, we have walkathons for the Deborah Hart Foundation, where we send donations. Inmates, they'll go to cell, collecting donations from inmates to contribute to different worthy causes. We have Bread for the World Foundation, where they sell T-shirts and take the proceeds and contribute to them. They have, I know in the Protestant community, they have, I think it's like 20 different missions that they work with. I know I'm not too familiar with everything, but I know there's 4 teenagers they generally send to school, summer camp, I believe it is. Each year, they take 4 of them each year. They take contributions from their tithes through church that they use the monies to send these teenagers to camp each year. And this has been going on for like 20 years. So these are programs that, and there's many more of them that go on that society, they're not aware of.
And this is the impetus of the prisoners here?
Oh, yeah.
And so what you do is you collect money from the outside and, you stimulate things that are going on in the community. Is that correct?
No, we collect money from the inside, from other prisoners, other inmates.
So you all have your own financial system here. I mean, you have your own money here and you can buy things and purchase things.
Right. They have a commissary which you purchase your food items, hygiene items, and so forth. So you have a bank account here, more or less, that you pretty much budget yourself. And but what they generally do is when they have these functions, such as walkathons, run-a-thons, and so forth, they have long forms that other inmates, when they participate, if they're not even participating, they may stop by just to donate 25 cents. They may donate 50 cents, $1, $5, or whatever the case may be. And these are the proceeds that they use to donate to other charities on the outside community, such as the Deborah Hart Foundation, Bread for the World, and there's several lists that goes on. So.
Well, we're moving towards the end of our hour now, and what I'd like to do is to get from each one of you any message that you would like to convey specifically to the outside world, perhaps to your children or the young children who might be listening. Of course, this is 10 to 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, so hopefully we don't have too many children listening, but their parents. What would you tell parents who are listening to this program today, and how would you guide them, and what kinds of specific things might each one of you tell them? We'll start with Terrence.
Well, for me, as I could say for the parents outside, educate your children, because it starts at home.
Okay. Charles?
My suggestion would be family, along with community unification, through programs, as I mentioned before, after-school programs. Stay involved with your children. Don't send them by themselves to softball practice or whatever the case may be. Participate with them. Go with them. Find other programs that you can involve yourself. And that's the key. That's the key point, is getting yourself involved with your kids and stay involved. Stick to it. Stick to programs. Don't let your kids quit either. And that also leads to, lifelong habits by allowing them to start one thing and then quit it. They end up developing, they may develop a habit of quitting in other instances. If they quit in one instance, it's easier to quit in the second and even easier the third. So stay with them, get them in project, keep them involved, and stick to it.
O'Day?
Well, all I can say is really, guide them, guide your children, keep them, on the right path. Know what's going on in their life. Don't let them. You gotta be with them at all times. You have to know what's going on, because if you don't, something's gonna happen that's gonna pass right by. You're gonna know what to do when the situation comes that's too bad, too rough to get out of.
Now,
I was a single mother with children at home, and I didn't have money. And I had to work. I had 2 jobs. My children, they didn't have my time, really. Of course, I had a family to help and support me, much more than some other people have. I can tell you from the point of view of a single mother that working all day and having to come home at night, it's the hardest thing in the world, especially when they're sick, when they're crying, or when I'm sick. It was very difficult. Most of the time I felt like I was alone. And I don't have the answers, because our society is so based on, if your marriage doesn't work, you can walk away. And, excuse me, but for the most part, it's the father who walks away. The mother must stay home. And my suggestion, and from what I hear from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that we really need to band together as a community for our children and stop looking at single parents and single mothers being ostracized by the community because they're not the mother-father nuclear family. It takes the mother and father staying together and the support of the family. But if we look at all the single mothers there's about 50% here. And I know Chuck has a product of a single mother with who's had 12 children, and she's still alive and 87 years old. What I'm hearing from all of you is that we need to take a look at society. And you 3 gentlemen here are so articulate and intelligent and full of hope. It's not the impression we get from the television or from the media. And I believe that to the listeners out there, what we need to tell them is we need to look at our community and our own backyards to help our own children and banding together for the sake of our children. Wherever you are in the city, in the country, we need to band together to help our children. Without my own personal family, I don't know what would have happened to my own children. I worked hard and I loved my children, but it wasn't enough, especially for boys who needed a father, especially when they were turning teenage years. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time and what you shared here with us. And I think our callers and our listening audience have a different perception of what prison life is like and what we need to do for some of our children. I would like to remind you that this is Children Come First. This is Dr. Daria Brezinski. We are 750 AM WAAT on your radio dial. You can visit us anytime from Tuesday, 10 to 11 a.m. every Tuesday. Please join us next week. We will have more guests who are extraordinary in talking about children and children's issues. Thank you for listening.